First I saw it on the web. I was really interested in seeing what it might look like, and I heard stories. So I sort of looked it up online, and I thought, looks a bit cold. And it reminds me of a hospital building. I thought, you know, I appreciate things such as access to projectors, access to, you know, TVs, access basically to equipment. I appreciate that. I appreciate Wi-Fi. I appreciate these modern devices. In terms of space, I don't think I'm a big fan of this building. But I like the office. I like the office where we are at the moment, because I didn't have a personal space in the old building. So when we had office hours, we would have to sometimes just sit in the corridor, talk to students, because really we didn't have that space. I am extremely lucky, and people on our floor, especially in this corner of the building, are extremely lucky. We have a beautiful view of these fantastic trees. But there are offices that, first of all, don't really have windows that open. There are offices where people sitting inside them can be constantly watched. I don't want to use the word surveilled, but you know, they're constantly there, and I know that they're trying to make it their own space. They're sticking big posters, you know, Star Wars posters or whatever they can find, to kind of try and hide in their own office, you know, from constant surveillance and from view of the others. Those guys, they don't really have that, and you know, I'm lucky. I don't know, I'm lucky in this one, but those guys I feel sorry for. Well, the old building, you know, there were problems with it, obviously, because for starters, I think it had absolutely no facilities for the disabled. I remember one student who always needed two people to lift her up the stairs because she was in a wheelchair. But I always thought, this is so unfair, that there are no lifts, you know, that she just can't wheel, you know, around the building and feel comfortable in that space. So in this respect, it's a huge improvement, and I am absolutely aware of that. There's also in the old building, there was a sense of privacy, in the sense that you could just chat to someone without feeling that you are surrounded by people from every side and almost watched. Because there were lots of little corners you could go to if you wanted to have a private chat, and you didn't feel that exposed. Here, you feel exposed. This building is huge, but I don't think it's got anything for me to discover. I think every room is identical to itself, except for the color scheme, which I find absolutely horrendous. The only colors that I find acceptable are the colors here. But the bright green or the bright orange is kind of painful for the eye, and I don't like such bright colors. I think they're very distracting and also quite unpleasant. If I was an architect, I guess instead of having these huge open spaces where I can see students trying to revise for lessons and, you know, sitting on these white, extremely uncomfortable benches, extremely uncomfortable, let's face it. I would probably try to think not just of space and air and light, which is very nice, but I would also consider the human factor, quite simply, you know, creating some kind of a comfort zone. So I would create spaces within spaces, I imagine, where I would even put, let's say, armchairs instead of benches, somewhere in the corners, you know, just two armchairs to kind of make people want to sit and chat to each other, rather than think of this space solely in terms of working space. Because I accept it is work, I accept we all come here to study, to work, but you know, university environment should also be about socializing, and a lot of most interesting ideas come through just informal chat. The first few months were horrible because there was a huge queue waiting for the key. There may still be the queue, but I'm trying, you know, everybody's trying to figure out the best way to get the key. So usually you kind of ask the teachers to leave the key on the desk, and you know, you don't have to queue. But anyway, I rush through the door, I get the key, I come here, I have a quick cup of coffee. I then take, because that's interesting as well. I mean, I've been praising the equipment, and the equipment is something marvelous, but you know, you have to travel with your own cables. And then I teach in that room. Sometimes you don't leave the room for 6 hours, you just have small breaks. But the breaks are usually taken by short consultations with some students. After teaching, I go to the canteen, and I have to say the food is really okay. The old building, that was trash. So I grab quick food, I eat it here. I don't eat it downstairs because by then, let's say after 6 hours of teaching, I've had enough of people. I really like people, but now I want to retrieve here, so I actually eat here very quickly. I then either jump on my bike and cycle for an hour to get home, or jump on 1 or 2 trams, and it takes me an hour to get home. With the old building, I appreciated the change. However critical I am about this new one, I appreciate the change. And when the journey is just painful sometimes, but change is good. The very fact that it forces you to reflect on the change and to think about its consequences, But change is good.